Thank you, Sunil, for joining today on Let's Talk Business series by RealtyNXT.
My pleasure, Kritika. I've been seeing some good work you're doing. I think was wanting to come here, so it happens today. So thanks for inviting.
Glad you're here because we have some great questions for you because so many announcements that you have recently made. So before we go there, let me ask you one important question I'm sure our viewers would be interested to know is, from Sunil Pareek, the individual, to the executive director, how has the journey been, and did you always thought about getting into real estate?
So it's interesting you asked this, because had you asked this question to my school teachers, right, they would be shocked. And they'd say, "What, Sunil, you're talking about townships, you're talking about leadership," because Sunil, the individual, during his school days was just not academically oriented. There was hardly any curiosity, not focused. You know, those typical 70-80% kids in the school who are just lost, who have no plan, just go with the flow. So that's how I was. Then some event happened in personal life. So I lost my father. Along with siblings sharing responsibility after school, before even you have graduated, when your mom is still in her 30s, you know, that hits you hard. It kind of makes you grow very fast. I think something like that happened. Was so lost, and some divine intervention. We had 2 or 3 people who came into life during that stage who almost mentored me. So they actually gave me the direction of how a focus, clarity, consistency in life will eventually help me in a long term. Was initially difficult to understand. They tried all little tricks also. There was one of the mentor, you know, whom I used to call him uncle. He said, "Sunil, just study for 3 years. 30 years अच्छा हो जाएगा." And of course later I realized 30 years तो और मेहनत करना है. But I think things changed. It took some time, but I developed very raw discipline, very fierce focus. That changed me. A kid who hardly could pass exams topped this program. Later, along with my graduation, I pursued company secretaryship. I went on to do MBA in Hyderabad, and again I topped my program in Hyderabad. That really kind of surprised people, pleasantly surprised this time around. I think when I finished my MBA, I just looked upon the journey and made sort of a small little philosophy that long-termism in a short-term world, that'll work. No shortcuts. Set your goals. Just clarity and consistency, integrity. Keep pursuing them. Compounding will happen.
True.
And that happened, right? After MBA, the most crucial thing for anyone is the first job. So I was lucky. I had multiple job offers. Some with big salary, some with big title. But I chose one which didn't have title. It didn't have a big paycheck, and the office actually was housed out of a small residential sort of a bungalow. It was a subsidiary of IDFC, which used to do infrastructure advisory. Why I chose that? I think I wanted depth. Title to aa jayega. And that was one of the finest decisions probably I took. That introduced me to infrastructure and fringes of real estate. I was thrown like deep into public-private partnership. I saw how big contracts are done from a government perspective, from a private sector perspective, large ticket deals. I had met some real big billionaires at their offices doing financial modeling for them. So that learning curve was great, and again I encountered a mentor who made the learning curve very richer. But things have to flow. I moved into EY, and EY was not just a job. EY for me was where I sharpened my craft. Not just technical. There are certain skills like judgment, like communication, like strategy. They cut across the roles you play. That's something which I picked up there. EY also introduced me to the world of real estate. I thought real estate is common, but it's only after looking at how things work from lens of an advisor and a banker that I started to enjoy real estate. Something very interesting happened there, and eventually that pivoted me to where I am today. Is I used to observe the promoters of these large infra companies, large real estate companies, that the kind of pride they take, the kind of hunger and fire they have, not in executing, but in creating. So the nation building they were doing really charmed me. For anyone who has just worked and consulting, just to see that you can actually build something, you can shape cities, was charming, and somewhere that seed was sown. that one day I would like to contribute in city shaping at this scale. So I continued in EY. I sharpened or rather I would say I cultivated my entrepreneurial spark that came in. And a time came where I met Ben Salmon and early team at Assetz. Ben Salmon is an Australian, great guy. He was trying to do real estate in India, and people are surprised how a foreigner can do real estate in his individual capacity, more like a startup. But I think meeting him and the early team was kind of path changing. We had an instant alignment, and I liked the vision of how real estate should be done in India in a very transparent manner, in an institutional manner. Spoke of governance, spoke of big fours right in 2013 as for audits, etc. So it happened, I moved ship. I just didn't move as a adding top level bandwidth, but more like a professional stakeholder to drive growth, to build that organization into something which is probably India's rare professional institutional led real estate platform. So journey has been great. There's one more, Mr. Akshay Divani, who joined in almost at the same time. Incredible vision. So Akshay and I, we've been more than a decade now, been working. Assetz has really grown well. When the scale is like 15-20 times maybe in the decade. But it's not about the numbers or the scale, it's how we have grown. So now it's professional, institutional style. The integrity is pretty powerful. We have made a commitment to deliver fair value to everyone who's involved with us. So I think that's a journey of Sunil from hardly passing exam in a small town to now sitting and talking about townships. As I said, long-termism in a short-term world kind of summarizes my journey of how I've reached here, and a lot of interesting things about to happen in future.
Sure, and I'm sure while you entered with the first job in infra, during that time till now what we have seen change and a lot of leaders have spoken about, and I would like to know from you, it was a very unorganized market, it was not well structured. So where do you see the time has changed in all the ecosystem, because be infra, construction and now being in real estate, where the changes have actually taken place and where still changes are required?
So you're spot on. When real estate construction was considered to be highly fragmented and unorganized space. And what's the age of real estate development as an industry? According to me, maybe 25 years. It's not that old. Before that, I think government was the biggest real estate developer. So apart from government, you had some of the smaller players doing things in a very fragmented fashion, one person driven, one man army, and political influence. So real estate was considered to be sort of a dirty business, so to say. Anyone joining real estate at that time was, if you have no option, chalo, I'll do real estate. Yeah. Right? Even if you look at the gender diversity in real estate, still it is low. I don't think it's more than 10-11% of the entire workforce. Those days it used to be much lesser, 3-4%. So from that sector till today, I see, let's say 1 to 10 is the path one has to take. We have already taken 6 or 7 steps. A lot of things have changed. I think it's the consumer, it's the government, it's the capital that has driven this change. And also the second generation entering the business. From a government perspective, RERA certainly added the push, the impetus. Is RERA fully followed in spirit? Yes and no, and that's a big question. But at least that provided a framework. Lot of land reforms came in, lot of these Benami Act, etc. Got introduced. So regulatory reform certainly pushed. Customers also started becoming more aware with tech, with more communication, with more interconnection between customers. I think the awareness of customer also drove the builders, developers, etc. to organize themselves better. Third being the capital. Now, if you see the first wave of capital that happened in India was between 2004 and 2008 till global financial crisis. So the capital providers were initially charmed by the scale and opportunity of real estate, but I don't know how much of diligence they did, but a lot of them lost money. So when the next round of funding started happening, they realized that funding has to go to institutions, to platforms which are better organized, which are better governed. And that also drove the industry to kind of organize themselves better. So today, if you ask me, every city has its own dynamic. I feel Bangalore is the most organized one, reasonably professional and well-governed entities. Other city has its own sort of dynamics. There is a mix. NCR probably will be lesser compared to MMR. There's still a lot of work to be done for real estate to become as professional as an IT company. There is a long path to be taken. But since real estate depends heavily on government, there are third-party interfaces. There are challenges, but it's a long journey. I think another 10-15 years, things should become like an Infosys, as I said.
Right. So during your journey, what was the most pivotal failure that taught you a lot compared to the success you gained?
I would say failure is a learning, and I think I've been having learning all through the journey. Failure may not be failure of a project or failure of a venture. I think it is more of failure of thoughts, failure of beliefs. That eventually gets corrected, teaches you, and things keep changing. So, for instance, initial days, while I had great mentors, I also had some advisors who gave me advice like, fake it till you make it, right? And now, initially I believed, saying, "ठीक है, बड़े बोल रहे हैं, maybe that's right." And then I realized, I failed rather, It's okay to say I don't know. It's okay to just accept, learn and move on. You'll be more authentic. You'll grow rather better. But that fake it till you make it is something which I tried, I didn't resonate with, but it did create certain setbacks. So kind of try to work and overcome that. Also, when you move from consulting into industry, one of the biggest challenges is unlearning. Consulting works differently. It's very easy to sit and advise, learn 5 things from your, put your IQ. Of course, they do a great job, but running the business on the ground, facing all the challenges is different. From outside, things look great buildings, aesthetic, sales, big numbers, great market cap, but what goes behind is something which probably a consultant doesn't see. So there was a lot of unlearning. I think I took a little extra time for unlearning, and then I thought maybe I felt that the way things can ideally go in a EY kind of a setup will also work in a real estate setup. So I call that as a holding certain beliefs too tight. But then industry and time teaches you, and you do change and improve. So like that, I feel there are a lot of these thoughts and beliefs, which patience, for instance, was one of the things. Anyone who's doing deals, so at EY I used to handle M&A transactions. So anyone who's doing deals, you know the result in a year or 6 months. Industry, it's a long-term game, right? So you don't get instant results for yourself, for the company, for the projects. So patience, you need to be patient. Just believe in a long-term goal. Be clear, consistently follow it. Value creation will happen over a period of time. So all these kind of breaking or shattering of some of the thoughts is what I would call as a learning that came from failure. And it's still an ongoing journey. I mean, still learning and still kind of picking up.
I'm really interested to know, if not real estate, what and where we would have seen you today building something.
I think, as I said, real estate didn't happen by design. Real estate happened because I was in EY doing infra and got introduced to real estate. So, and then naturally moved on here. I always in EY thought that industry which builds is something which is not for professionals. And it was a very strong belief. And today, even if you meet some of these people from big fours or funds and banks, 2025 too, there are people who believe they're not meant for industry, right? So I was also of something similar belief that while I want to shape cities, contribute at a bigger level, how will it work out? It just worked out because we were in a very professional setup here at Assetz. If not, maybe I would be doing infrastructure, more around renewable power. I guess that would have been my natural second alternative. renewable energy, solar, again large scale capital play, offtake to the government, offtake to the grid. Why just not in India, maybe in some of the other countries. So yeah, so renewable energy would have been my next best alternative.
So how are you using sustainability when it comes to your assets projects?
So rightly said, sustainability used to be a buzzword earlier. Should it be? No. Why? Because the built environment, the construction industry, roughly contributes 40% of carbon emissions. So that's big. If you look at India level, India has taken a pledge to become carbon neutral by 2070. 2070 looks far, but it's hardly 40 years. Buildings, residential buildings, commercial buildings have a big role to play in achieving that goal by 2070. Every single building that goes without sustainability in spirit, that target, that effort is increasing. So I think it's not novelty now, it is a necessity. But it's not just one person's responsibility. So if you look at sustainability, it's the government, it's the developers, and it's the association, RW, or the users eventually who will use it. So the government can enforce, can frame policies, enforce them well. I think they are enforcing some really good policies in Bangalore. Say solid waste management policy, some of the wastewater treatment policies are good. I think solid waste management policy is probably best in the country or could be best in the world. Its enforcement is a challenge. As far as developers are concerned, we can enable the structures. We can build all the plugins that the building is future ready even if something else has to be brought in future. It's finally comes down to the RWA, the association, of how they enforce, how they implement it. And if you ask me, they're doing a fairly good job. So Bangalore has more than 1500 RWAs, and they take up sustainability in practice in a viable fashion pretty effectively. In fact, we get to learn a lot. We get to then incorporate some of those things in our designs for the next project. So it's a joint effort. From our side, what can we do? We try to put and simplify that in a module called Carbon Healing Homes. Idea is, don't put pressure on the environment, try to reduce, try to heal to the extent possible. So our Carbon Healing Homes has multiple modules which we incorporate in our design and practices, and it is evolving. So as we learn something new, as something new comes up, we keep plugging it into the Carbon Healing Home module. So what it encompasses broadly is water related initiatives, solid waste related initiatives, power efficiency related initiatives, climate capsule, which is more like landscaping and managing your temperature within the township initiatives, and how we construct and what materials we use during construction. There are some PropTech companies which have put water sensors to see that wastage is not happening. Sometimes a flush is not working, so there is a leakage happening perennially. So there are sensors now that can plug. One thing I would love to do, but there are practical challenges, water meter. If independent unit can get water meter, your usage from 150 ml, 150 liters per day will fall to 80 because bill aayega to, right? And people also know that, sort of a green guilt, I'm using so much of water. But there are challenges of cost, there are challenges of how to have a meter, but those also will become reality one day. So it's a evolving practice. Things are happening, but in the next 4-5 years, I think we'll be more sustainable than where we are. So likewise, the kind of landscaping you grow, if you can reduce the temperature within your project by 1 to 2%, the kind of heat, the cooling needs go down. If we can plan the size of the windows accordingly, that there is ample light through the day, and windows are not blocking the light, your electricity consumption can come down. So multiple small initiatives under the Carbon Healing Homes we are taking, so that we can enable the structure, we can put in the required modules, and then so that in future government can frame laws, they can enforce, RWAs are there, they will continue the good work and try to make it more sustainable.